Hi, welcome to another episode of MYD Global, where we talk all things disaster. I'm your host, Leanne Hackman-Carty. In today's episode, I speak with Glendine Gerard, Director of Defend Dignity, about the whole issue of sexual exploitation, human trafficking, and really how this humanitarian disaster is a global modern-day slavery. So stay tuned and learn more about what this really is, how the tie is to the pornography industry, as well as some great resources that you can take advantage of in order to help someone get out of the trade or avoid getting into the trade or really support this organization in a meaningful way. So stay tuned. Hi, Glendine. Nice to see you today. How are you?
Hi, Leanne. I'm really good. Thanks.
Good. Well, before we get talking today on this topic, just curious a little bit about yourself. Could you talk about your background, what got you to this point?
Sure. So I've been married, first of all, to my husband, Doug, for 42 years. I've got 3 married kids, 8 grandchildren. Way back when I was a pastor, I got involved in specific areas to do with women and children. And so that really, that led me, it's a long story, but it led me to this work around the issue of human trafficking and all forms of sexual exploitation. So started Defend Dignity, I direct it, and helped to start it with a group of other women. A couple of men kind of joined us along the way. And it was kind of like giving birth to a baby. So I say that it sort of was in that birthing process for about 9 months to a year in 2010. And then in 2011, we officially launched it. So we are an initiative of the Christian Missionary Alliance churches in Canada. And our mission is to end all forms of sexual exploitation here within our country.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So that's the topic. What I want to talk to you today about is the whole issue around human trafficking. I mean, this station is dedicated to all things disaster. And when I think of this topic, this to me is a humanitarian disaster. And it's one that often is just swept under the rug. And a lot of people say, oh, it's no big deal. A lot of these people want to be involved in it. It gives them a job. But it's not that. I mean, it's so complicated. Can you talk about the whole issue of human trafficking and how it truly is our modern day slavery?
Yeah, sure. Well, let me just read you the Public Safety Canada definition. It's really short, but then I'll explain a little bit more of that. So Public Safety Canada says human trafficking is the recruitment, transportation, harboring, and or exercising control, direction, or influence over the movements of a person in order to exploit that person, typically through sexual exploitation or forced labor. And it is often described as a modern form of slavery. So Defend Dignity just works in the area of sexual exploitation. So that's the frame of reference that I'll talk to you about today. But that really covers everything from luring a victim to actually recruiting them into the sex industry, if that's what you want to call it, then to exploiting them for sexual purposes. And I think a misconception that I often stumble over here in Canada, and I'm pretty sure it'll be the same throughout the world and especially throughout North America, is that people often think that to be a truly a human trafficking issue or human trafficking victim, that they have to be transferred from another country. They have to be brought in across an international border. And that really is not correct at all. In fact, in Canada, human trafficking victims are mostly domestic. 93% of our victims are from within our own country. It's only 7% that come from across the border. And so the most common, I think another surprising thing is that a predator, a trafficker is going to be where kids are, where vulnerable people are. And where are these days, right? They're online. They're on social media apps. And so we're seeing this huge rise in kids being lured that way through Facebook, through Instagram, through Snapchat, WhatsApp, all of those kind of places, because that's where kids are. And predators, traffickers have the ability to be anybody there, right? So they can manipulate and come across like they're another 13-year-old kid, when in actuality they might be a 25-year-old guy who is trying to befriend them, and that's what happens, right? That's where the manipulation starts to take place. They befriend online often, and this can happen in person as well. And then they eventually meet up, and then this whole, in my world, in my sector, it's called the boyfriend pimp or the Romeo pimp. That is the typical way that a girl would be lured. So manipulating her through flattery, through gifts, through whatever means to feel like she's actually loved and of value to him, when that's not the case at all, right? He wants to exploit her. So, yeah, go ahead, Ian.
Okay, so as a mother of a daughter who's exactly the age you said that most girls, I think your statistics showed at 13 and a half is when a girl first gets...
That's the average age, right? That's the average age. Yeah. So I talk with police all across the country, and some will say, yeah, I've seen kids as young as 8. Oh. I was just talking to a girl yesterday who told me she started being exploited at the age of 12. So yeah, we need to be concerned. Yeah.
These are kids. That should not be this should not be their life. So what can parents, what kind of tools and resources do you have available for parents to help them protect their kids from online exploitation and these, predators who are reaching out to them?
Yeah. We're pretty, we tell parents to really monitor their kids' social media accounts. So that means you get the passwords, you look after their passwords for their email accounts, like any online thing. We just can't be all that worried about privacy stuff. Because that is the reality. That's where predators are approaching our kids. And then, of course, educating them, just, they're at the mall. Like, lots of stories where predators show up at the mall and target your child. So just the whole awareness around what some of these statistics look like, some of the tactics that these guys will use. And just a reminder again, don't give out information, don't talk to people that you don't know, and bring them home to mom and dad, right? Just be extra cautious around all of that. So we've got lots of stuff on our website, some tools, action tools. We've got a one-pager document on what is sexual exploitation, all that kind of thing, to help people understand what it is that they need to know and they need to look for. I mean, there are certainly issues of vulnerabilities that exist that would make someone that much more vulnerable. So, for instance, in Canada, it's Indigenous women and girls who are the most trafficked and exploited. So, over 50% of Canada's human trafficking victims are Indigenous. And what's so disturbing about that is Indigenous people only make up 4% of our population. So you can see then just what a tragic issue this is for Indigenous people. And what I know about the issue globally is that's not unusual. It is typically Indigenous people in whatever country they're being trafficked and sexually exploited that they are the most vulnerable. And then if you look at children in government care, new Canadians, people with disabilities, right? All of those things become vulnerabilities for sexual exploitation. And so we need to really do our job as a country to protect through laws, through policies, and through education. That's a huge piece. Our work exists around 3 key A words of awareness raising. So we've got a youth curriculum that you can download on our website. We do a whole one-day conference now called Reveal. And I haven't really talked about this, but about 5 years ago, we dove into the issue of pornography because all the research is showing that there is this direct link between pornography and the fueling of demand and just the hypersexualization of our culture, right? Makes all of these things look like it's okay when really we're recognizing that there is this link. And so this conference we do is called Reveal, helps parents to know how to talk to their kids about these issues, anything related to that topic, how it relates to human trafficking. And so those are some of the things we do in the awareness area. we have an initiative where we go on to First Nations reserves. We have an Indigenous survivor who is passionate about this and wants to get out and educate her sisters on this issue. And so those are some of the things we're doing in awareness. But we also advocate for law and policy reform, because we look at how important that is to have good laws and good policies that are going to protect not just women and girls. Boys are being increasingly trafficked, transgender people. All of those numbers are on the rise, and so that's some of the work we do there too, is advocating with government, but also advocating with companies, with organizations where we see that they are allowing, and sometimes unknowingly allowing for ease of access to pornography or trafficking images, that kind of thing. And so we're doing that kind of work, and then aid, simply in the form of finances. Twice a year, we have a survivor support fund that we make available to survivors all across Canada who can apply for all sorts of help. The stories that we get from people coming to us from across the country are really paints the picture of the reality of what's happening out there. So things, this fund has helped with basic necessities, certainly education, transit passes, first and last month's rent, tattoo removal, because increasingly we're seeing that pimps brand their name on the neck or some body part of their victims. And so, of course, when she gets out of that, she wants to have that removed, so we pay for that. All those kinds of things that the fund goes toward. And yeah, we're just really grateful that donors are willing to help us with that. And I wish everybody could read the stories of what a difference that fund has made in the lives of some of these people.
Yeah. It's a complicated issue when you look back and you think, okay, some of these girls, they had a rough start anyways. Whether it's incest, it's abuse, and then someone preys on that vulnerability and makes money off them. And the thing that I think you spoke to when I first met you, you talked about the myths. Like, people have these misconceptions about this whole industry, thinking, no, people choose to do that. It's okay. Those people in the porn videos are they're actors. They're willing participants. And yet, when you really start to peel back what this really is, this isn't by choice. These people don't want to be there. And if there is a direct connection between porn and sexual trafficking and all of this issue, we do have to look at these various things and how they're connected.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. We're actually in the middle of getting ready to do a video kindly with 5 different survivors of sexual exploitation from coast to coast in Canada. So I've been reading through, we do some pre-interviews, been reading through some of their stories again. And, one of the questions we ask them is, when you were in the thick of this, did you want to get out? Like what is that? Like, you've touched on that, this idea of they've chosen this. And, very interesting to hear these responses. Like they would all say, they've all said so far that, when I was in it, it was because I felt like I had no choice.
Yeah.
I was in it to survive. Although if you'd asked me if I was choosing this, I might have said yes. And isn't that all of us, right? When we're in a certain behavior path and we don't clearly see perhaps what has put us there. But all of them have said, when I look back on that now, I recognize that, how is it that a 12 or 13-year-old can clearly choose this as the path for her life? That's just not possible, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, stay tuned for the video. We're going to be filming it here in February, and really hope we've got our target audience actually will be some of our elected officials to help them understand the issue a little bit more. I think as you rub shoulders with survivors and you hear their stories, then you just understand the issue that much more, right? So
So just, as we wrap up, what keeps you going? This is a tough industry. I can't imagine, hearing these stories and being the same person after, because it must be incredibly frustrating and maddening. And yet, there's hope, right? I mean, what you're providing them is some hope.
Definitely.
So I'm just curious what keeps you going and pushing ahead.
Yeah, well, first of all, I'd say my faith. I am a person of faith, and just totally believe that Jesus wants me to do this work, that he's not surprised by any of this. He is as saddened and sickened by it as we are,
Yeah.
and he's leading the charge, so to speak. So that really keeps me motivated. And then, as I've mentioned, I know lots of survivors now across the country, and their stories of resilience and of hope are huge, and they're a great motivator. Um, so those two things, I think, in particular, and then successes. We are seeing some successes. Increasingly, I'd say, in the 10 years that since we've started, more and more people are getting it. More and more average citizens are wanting to get involved, which is delightful for me to see. And then successes in some of our advocacy work. We're really happy that companies are changing policies and practices. Government has made some changes since I started this work, and all those things I think work together to really keep me excited about what's up ahead. Yeah.
That's wonderful. Well, I will include links to the work you're doing so people could get more resources. They can reach out. I know if anyone, say a woman is watching this and is in the midst of it right now, is it wise for her to just go to your website? Do you have contact information there where she can reach out?
Yeah, she could certainly come to our website. The other thing I would be very remiss in not telling you about the new human trafficking hotline number that Canada now has. It just was put into place last year. So it's 1-833-900-1010. And I put that in my phone right away, and I would encourage all of you, stick it in your phone contacts so that if you come across something that seems suspicious to you, then you've got that number right there to call. So certainly if somebody's listening and they think, oh man, am I being recruited? Am I being lured? First thing you need to do is call that number. They're great. They've got staff all across the country. And no matter where you are in the country, they'll be able to respond and point you in the right direction for some help.
Great. And I assume even if you're not in this country, they will have some kind of resource they would never shut you down, I'm sure.
No, absolutely. There is a U.S. hotline number as well. I don't have it on the tip of my tongue, but that's easy for you to Google. And so if you're in the U.S., Google it and stick it in your phone too.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Yeah. Well, Glendine, thank you very much. I congratulate you on the work you're doing and making a difference. And hopefully, even this video, I hope it reaches somebody. So thank you again.
Thank you, Leanne.